Hello everyone, this is Mr. Lockacher here, and today I'm going to be talking about using technology for instruction. Now, as teachers, we use technology in our classroom constantly in some way, shape, or fashion, and there are a lot of legal, social, and ethical issues that can arise when using technology, and it's important that we are aware of these implications and possibly consequences of technology in the classroom. So in this presentation using Google Slides, I'm going to be talking about those three major aspects and also providing tips on ways that we can not only address these issues, but also make our classrooms a better learning environment when using technology. So, like I said, I'm going to be talking about legal, ethical, and social issues. And first, I'm going to be talking about legal. So let's get started. So as teachers, we use many outside resources that do not belong to us. And it is important that we are aware of not only to cite these resources, but to be aware of how much a creator wants us to use the resources and also in what capacity. And I'll get into those details in just a moment. So it's important to keep in mind that this applies to articles, movies, books, music, and upon a lot of other things as well. So for example, with music, we are actually not allowed to play more than 30 seconds of a song. This is something that kind of goes by the wayside, obviously, but a school or a teacher can be sued if they're not careful when using another person's work. So these are things to keep in mind. So there's something called fair use, and this is what these four aspects are what a court looks at when examining a copyright claim. So imagine if a teacher is being sued for using an entire book rather than simply using a chapter or even just a couple of pages, which is what the creator allowed to do possibly. Well, the court looks at these four aspects here and see if a copyright claim can be made. And if a lot of items do have fair use, but they look at the purpose and character of that use. So why was a teacher using an entire book rather than just a chapter? The nature of the copyrighted work, and if even if a teacher provides credit or links of some kind, that can be counted as fair use. The amount and substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyright work as a whole. So for example, an entire book would be an issue, but just a couple of pages may not be. And lastly, this is one that I think is used most often, is that or that's looked at more often, is the use of that book or resource by the teacher affecting the way that the creator receives money. So you can think of this as perhaps in bootlegging music. You have a lot of people that create CDs that they own already, and they distribute those CDs and sell them. And that's illegal, obviously, because the original artists of those songs are not getting paid for those songs being distributed. So that's a way of looking at that. But luckily, there's a site or a nonprofit organization, I should say, called Creative Commons, and they allow creators to copyright their material through 6 different licenses. I won't get into too much detail of what these licenses are, but I will explain the first one. So the first one is a very lenient very lenient license, while the last one's very as you go down this list, they get more and more restrictive. So this is called an attribution license, and this is a resource or creative work that can be distributed, that can be tweaked or altered, can be used for commercial and non-commercial uses. So that means someone else can make money off of it, but obviously that work must be credited, or the creator must be credited with creating that resource. And like I said, these get more restricted as you go along. So for example, with the last one here, it can be distributed, but it cannot be tweaked, and obviously you must give credit. The first 3 here can be used for commercial and non-commercial purposes, while the last 3 cannot be. Obviously, as teachers, we're not going to be using really any resource for commercial purposes, So we don't really have to worry about that. But definitely in terms of crediting and distribution, those are things we have to keep in mind. So tips for both fair use and Creative Commons. It's always important to give creators credit when using certain materials. And also, it'd be great to research what license the work contains and ask permission to the creator or to the publishing company, whatever it might be, to ask if using that material is okay. And also, it's great to swap out materials each semester that may address, the same content or may get the same point across. So that way, you're not one, some material might become outdated, and also you're mixing things up and not using the same resource over and over again. So imagine if you use a couple pages out of a textbook, that textbook is not going to, or that company is not receiving any money from you using those pages over and over again. So it's kind of good to switch it out and kind of give everyone the fair use idea. And also, it'd be wonderful to create, no pun intended, create a Creative Commons lesson, or a fair use lesson possibly, and why it is important. You can connect the idea to plagiarism because obviously we as teachers, we expect students to cite information and cite research, and these same should be expected for us, and we can show them that this is how we keep that in mind and how we do it. And it'd be cool to show in that lesson, like perhaps movies or books or other material, and show them this label here that is often on that material. This is an example of a attribution non-commercial, no derivatives. And I apologize for that. So these labels are often found. This is the most restrictive license that you can put onto material. So next, we're talking about ethical issues. So while teachers may not be breaking the laws at times, obviously in terms of legal issues, certain moral issues can arise when using technology, and every student must be kept in mind when using technology. So one example of this is the digital divide. This is pretty much the growing gap in underprivileged members of society not having internet access at home, while those who are more privileged do have internet access, and that kind of creates a divide in what people can do and what students can do in terms of homework and other assignments. There are many causes of this, and I'll start talking about that right now. So this graph right here talks about the internet use based on education. As you can see, those who have college degrees have even in urban and rural areas, have a pretty high percentage of those who have internet at home. While those households that have no diploma in urban and especially rural areas, those households do not have as much internet access in terms of percentage. So education plays a huge factor into, well, at least for the parents of those students plays a major factor into that. What's even more interesting is race and ethnicity and the population density can affect the digital divide as well. Those who are African American, if you compare the rural and urban areas, there's a pretty large gap right there. Obviously, in urban areas, you have more resources because you're talking about a city. So Salisbury won't have as much resources and perhaps even money and it doesn't have the population compared to Baltimore, for example. So that's the difference between those two. If you look at if you compare that to those, for example, with white people, so urban areas, there's still a pretty massive divide, but actually there's a larger divide, but the urban areas in general with white people do have more internet access. So digital divide in the classroom. There's many different ways teachers can tackle this issue and kind of create opportunities for students to use the internet for those that they do not have access at home. They can allow computer access before and after school with teacher supervision, obviously. So if you have a computer in your room, you can allow students to use that computer, perhaps sign off on it the day before or a week before to possibly get work done, and after school as well. There's such things as pilot classrooms where laptops can serve every student in the school for a lesson. This is very common. You have laptops being pulled around in carts. You have as many of those as possible. We can add more of those to a school to give more students internet access to get assignments done and to have more technological lessons. A teacher can also go to the computer lab as much as possible with their class, so students become technologically literate and they can get those assignments done. And also you can give instructions to the public library in town or the nearest library, so students can go to that library and get work done there. Because obviously at home they simply won't be able to do it if they do not have internet access. So lastly, we have social issues, and it's important that we facilitate a healthy and safe learning environment when using technology. For obviously, as we know, technology can be used in negative ways for both teachers and students. So there's something called an acceptable use policies. Most of you are probably familiar with this. This is a list of rules from a school or a district that pretty much outlines the appropriate ways that technology is used. Most students and staff sign off on these documents. For a lot of students, or for a lot of teachers, have parents sign off on the document as well in the beginning of the school year. And usually they have like a preamble along with other stuff, including a definition section, and obviously the policies in which the technology can be used and the consequences of not following those rules, which I think is very important. And we lastly have cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is something that we're probably all familiar with. For those of you that kind of need perhaps just a clarification, it's the consistent harassment through the internet and or technology. This can be done through phones, social media, websites, among other things. It's sometimes more effective than face-to-face bullying because it can be done 24/7, and the person who's doing it may be anonymous. Cyberbullying happens sometimes more often than we think. It's been researched that 52% of young people report being cyberbullied. This is more of a study done on teenagers, but obviously it can still infiltrate elementary schools, and some of the teenagers that have been cyberbullied have been bullied before even that at elementary school. So in terms of tips that can be done with the classroom, for acceptable use policies, be consistent with punishment of misuse of technology, and also keep parents updated on technology being used in the classroom. And for cyberbullying, it's important to monitor behavior on blogging websites that you might use in the classroom, and keep an open line of communication with parents, administrators, and school counselors when bullying is suspected. That kind of goes for bullying in general, but particularly with cyberbullying, it can be kind of tough to tell what's going on, especially when a lot of the stuff is not out of our control, but a lot of it is done 24/7 compared to back in the day when it was done just at school. And for that, also keep in mind that with some assignments where feedback can be given, that's where bullying can happen as well. So this is the research that I looked up for this lesson or for this presentation. I'd like to thank you very much for watching, and if you have any questions, please let me know, and have a great day. Thank you.